Hello. This is a audio test for the Job Search Assistance How to Succeed in a Time of Crisis presentation happening here today. Stand by. Okay, hello everybody out there. This is James Hunter Warning on behalf of Employment Boost, here to deliver the Job Search Assistance session, How to Succeed in a Time of Crisis, one like we find ourselves in. I'm going to give it a few more minutes here to see if we can get a couple more people straggling in over the next few minutes. So sit tight and we'll be starting very shortly. Okay, so I think we're set to get started here. Once again, for those of you just joining, my name is James Hunter Warning, and I'm going to be taking you through the webinar here, brought to you by Employment Boost, professional resume writers, and it's going to be all sorts of things associated with the job search and how to navigate in a time of crisis, one like we find ourselves in, obviously, right now, COVID-19. A little bit taken over the news lately, as of late, but that doesn't mean the job search has to stop. There's certainly some things you can do now to set yourself up later, and these are always great tips to keep in mind. So, getting into it here, who is Employment Boost? And we are a organization offering a full suite of career services. So what does that mean? That means resume writing, it means career coaching, it means cover letters, LinkedIn's, everything under the sun, anything that helps you go from where you are in your career to where you want to be. That's what Employment Boost offers. And we don't just work with individual clients, we'll work with organizations looking to handle layoffs and make sure that their employees transition out effectively. We leverage a lot of different resources to provide the best service that we can, along with, we're paired with recruiting brands, we're paired with an in-house research team. So a lot of expertise that comes to play in order to, give you the best chance that you can in the job search. We offer a lot of major markets throughout the United States, including Greater Detroit, Chicago, Cleveland, Denver, New York City as well, but really we service clients throughout the nation. And we are part of Heavy Herd Holdings, and as you can see here, a lot of different brands underneath that umbrella, a lot of which are recruiting brands. So again, kind of keeping our finger on the pulse of the industry there as far as what's happening. We're in constant communication with recruiters regarding what hiring managers are looking for, and then again, on the applicant side, what's working, what's not. So a lot of resources that we get to pull from, make sure that we're up to date, providing the best service that we can. So we'll get in a little bit into the agenda here for what the presentation is going to entail. There's a lot of things we're going to go over, and we're going to start with breaking down a resume, the parts of it, what each portion contributes to the document, not only on a visual level, but a technical level as well. We'll go through some tips as far as resume writing goes, and common mistakes that we see as an organization, and I see as a certified professional resume writer myself. Things that are pretty common that can really hold people back. And then some other things as well outside of the resume, job search advice tips, techniques, things that you can be doing during this time to set yourself apart professionally and really get a leg up. And we'll finish off with some tips as far as interviewing goes, interviewing best practices. Even if you've been in 100 interviews or you haven't interviewed in the last 20 years or so, definitely some good tips there that I'll be able to share. And these are all insights brought to you, by our team, not just myself, but the team of certified professional resume writers. So the first thing that you're going to want to understand when putting together your resume is who's going to be reading it. And you understand that it's certainly a human element. There's going to be supervisors. The human resources department is always going to be taking a look. Talent acquisition specialists, recruiters, things like that definitely are a part of it still, and that's probably not going away. But another important element has been added recently that is going to be looking at the resume, and it's the computer element. It's what we call applicant tracking systems. So organizations, large and small, will receive applications, and they're going to receive a lot of them. And they don't just print them all out and have them at a stack at the end of their desk. No, they search through this database of resumes, and those resumes are ranked from top to bottom of the best fit to the worst fit. And from there, that's where they start to find their top applicants and the people that they're going to call for phone screens and call for interviews and things like that. If you're not at the top of that list, you're probably not getting to that human element. And that's something that really can affect a lot of people. 75% of qualified job applicants can be rejected just because there was something wrong with the formatting of their resume and the computer couldn't read it correctly, or it didn't have the information or the keywords maybe that they were looking for. Something that can be easily adjusted, but can really be a hindrance to a lot of people. So a lot of things that go into navigating those tracking systems would be frequency and placement of keywords on the resume. Having them front and center certainly does help, but having them multiple times, it's okay to repeat certain keywords throughout the document, and that's something that we'll get in a little bit later. We can expand upon kind of what those would look like. But frequency and placement are key things. Making sure your location is on there. A lot of organizations will geofilter. If you live in Chicago and you're applying for a role in Los Angeles, the candidate from Los Angeles probably has a leg up because they won't have to pay for moving expenses or anything like that. Someone local, they can even come in for an on-site interview. So things like that can be a hindrance as far as the applicant tracking system goes. And then having a lot of flash, as I like to think of it, on the resume. Graphics, images, tables, things like that can certainly hold the document back. It's definitely something that is difficult for the computer to read. So having those in there is not something that plays to your advantage. It's something that you should probably look to avoid in favor of something a little cleaner. So we're going to start with some resume basics, formatting and how it should look. And the resume itself should be as visually efficient as possible. What does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean that it should be sparse, but that also doesn't mean every available spot of white space should be filled either. You can see here it's in that example. We've got a couple different areas set up, but they're clearly defined, and they're not too spaced together. It's not something that you have to really concentrate. It's built to be skimmed, and to support that, and keeping it equally spaced and not too dense for someone, it's important to keep it to about 400 words per page. And we do recommend 1 to 2 pages. If you have fewer than 10 years of experience, 1 page is almost always the way to go. Anything more than that, you can start exploring 2 pages. It's not as much of an issue as it used to be. A lot of people still have it ingrained in their heads that resumes need to be 1 page, and anything longer than that, it's going to get thrown away. That's not necessarily the case. If your career has been long enough, you can certainly expand upon that. We want to make sure that all the big wins are expressed, and sometimes that takes 2 pages. Anything more than that, it starts to get a little dicey, but 2 pages is certainly okay. And as you can tell here, you see no colors, no text boxes, tables, or graphics. Very, like I said, visually efficient and built for that applicant tracking system. So we'll go through the resume here, kind of section by section, and we'll start with what we call the professional summary, and that's something that is kind of a cousin to that objective statement that was kind of in fashion a couple of years ago, but it is certainly more expanded upon. As you can see, it's about 8 to 12 seconds that a supervisor or a hiring manager is going to take a look at a resume, or even a screener in HR. So if you're going to have something that they're going to read for 8 to 12 seconds, you better make it impactful, and this is the section to do that. 3 to 4 sentences, very keyword heavy, and you can see in here, waterfall and agile methodologies, Lean Six Sigma, cross-functional team leadership, all great things that certainly are good keywords to have and things that you'll see in job descriptions. You can also have the job title there, Senior IT Project Manager. This is a spot where you can either put where you are, which is fine if you're looking to make a lateral movement, but this is also an opportunity to kind of reach ahead and let them know this is the role that you're going for. So if you're just a regular IT project manager and you want to make that leap to senior, here's the chance to put that into your resume, that you're looking to make that leap up, and it also helps on the tracking side as well. Those job descriptions that they're looking for don't just say IT project manager, they say senior. So have the word senior in there. It's something that it's certainly going to pick up. And as far as the summary goes, it doesn't have to be anything too expansive. 3 to 4 sentences is perfect. Anything more than that, it starts to get a little narrative, a little too thick to go through. So keeping it short and sweet certainly can go a long way. You also see this areas of expertise that's right below the professional summary, and that's just chock full of keywords. Again, keeping that idea that it should be front and center, top of the page. It can catch the attention of the applicant tracking systems, and then on the human element side, once it reaches through, this is another spot where they can quickly see some key terms that will be relevant to the role that you're pursuing. Next, we get to the body of the resume. Is something that everyone's pretty familiar with as far as listing out your roles, how long you were there, your title, and then some of the accomplishments. So something that I end up seeing quite a bit is that these job description or these areas in the body of the resume end up reading too much to like job descriptions. It's a lot of responsibilities and not necessarily accomplishments. You should be able to highlight some accomplishments that you have had throughout your career within those job descriptions. So, if you're able to, resolve customer conflicts, how many, how effectively, are there ways that you measured that? Quantitative metrics certainly are a great thing that everyone can kind of wrap their head around. So that's certainly something to keep in mind there. And then strong writing still goes a long way, making sure to use action verbs to start each bullet, keeping the writer engaged, and they also come off a little bit stronger. Using that active voice as opposed to passive is certainly something all the writers on our staff are sure to keep an eye on, and it goes a long way, and it also helps for it to be easily skimmed by maybe a recruiter or hiring manager. They're not going to maybe sit down for several minutes to read the resume. Like we said, it's about 8 to 12 seconds. So anything that can give them, a chance to skim and pick up some keywords, the more the better. Moving on, you want to make sure that you can showcase your tenure or upward trajectory within your career. Making sure that is clear. Number one thing is people getting lost within a resume, trying to find out, when was this role, was this a promotion or was this a different organization? So if you can be as clear and concise as possible with that, the easier it is for not only humans, but again, those applicant tracking systems to get it, to understand it on the other side. Locations, again, just providing some more context, and can also do some geofiltering there. Are you someone that's new to the area? Are you looking to make a move? Things like that, they can pick up from that kind of information. And as far as the formatting goes, you have a lot of options as far as bolding and italicizing, and do I use months or do I not use the months? You have a lot of options there. But the number one thing, if you pick a strategy, stick with it. You make sure that formatting is consistent. You'll see we have here the organizations are bolded, the city and state are not. The titles of the roles are bolded and italicized, and then we have months for the dates, and those are all bolded as well. The bullet points are the same. We do have one sub-bullet in there, but otherwise the spacing is the same. The font is the same for each section. So keeping an emphasis on formatting and consistency, always very important. Last but not least, we get to some of the other things that you would include on a resume. So education, professional development, volunteering, all these kinds of things can be showcased on a resume. Make sure to know where you should be putting them. For a recent grad, education may have to go towards the top of the resume. This is your most recent experience, your most comprehensive experience. You could even put in some classwork in there. That's something that might go a little bit further than a summer job or even an internship. Things like that can not necessarily always be the greatest place or the first thing you'd want to highlight. So education could be put up top. Again, consistency in formatting, you can see here. As far as the degrees go, we have the organization, or the university rather, is not bolded, but the degree is, and the emphasis is bolded and italicized. So things like that, to keep an eye on, attention to detail there. And you can also always keep an eye on certifications, professional development. This is something we're going to hit on later in the presentation, but that's something that you can always end up expanding upon. But make sure, if you're going to include it, that it is relevant. Not every certification has to be included, especially if you're making a transition, or it's for something completely unrelated to the role that you're applying to. Don't necessarily always need that. And you can also list technical skills as well. We have it listed here as proficiencies, but these can be a number of systems that you use, tools that you use in your day-to-day job, things that might be relevant for the next position. So always keep a running list of that in mind as you prepare the document and adjust it moving forward. So here's an example. I had mentioned some things that you could expand upon with education, especially if you're a recent graduate. You can expand upon the education as much as you want. As we see here, we have coursework, projects, clubs, and involvement that you were a part of. Make sure to be specific with the names and everything like that. But I will recommend that as you move on through your career, you're going to want to probably tone that down the further away you get from it, and start focusing on accomplishments within the professional world. But certainly something, if you're starting out, this is definitely a good strategy and a smart way to include keywords, even if you don't have necessarily that real world experience. So to sum it all up here, just a couple common resume mistakes. Stating that objective statement and not using the summary is a big one. It's objective statements really don't add a lot of value, but the summary can, especially from a keyword perspective. Making sure that the relevant information is on the document and non-relevant information finds itself on the cutting room floor. You certainly don't want that taking up the space, and it comes back to that visual efficiency that we discussed earlier. You want to make sure to highlight accomplishments and not just responsibilities. Organizations understand what the job responsibilities will be, and you don't want it to read like a job description. You want it to be a showcase of who you are and what you bring to the table. Spelling and grammar, still always important. It comes down to attention to detail, and if you have spelling mistakes or anything like that, it sticks out like a sore thumb. So make sure to read it over a couple of times, and make sure to proofread. And last but not least, funky formatting. This is graphics, this is tables, images, everything like that can really be a hindrance to the document. So if you can eliminate those, you're going to be in a good spot. A couple things to keep in mind overall for the resume. We're going to touch on it a little bit more going forward, but you'll notice that we didn't hit upon every little thing in the body of the resume. It's supposed to be the greatest hits. It's not the complete collection. It's the greatest hits. So you don't have to go too far into detail on every single thing that you've accomplished. This will fill up the document way too fast. So you want to give an overview of everything that you've been involved with, but not necessarily in detail. You can save that for when it's asked about once you're, sitting across from the hiring manager at the interview. So something that a lot of people are probably hopping onto now is keeping the resume up to date. You want to keep this on the mind, not necessarily, every day. You don't have to go in and update your resume, but as you progress throughout your career, you don't want to forget important things that happened, or promotions and dates and things like that. So, every once in a while, maybe every 6 months to a year, it's okay to revisit the document and make sure that you're keeping things updated just in case something happens. We have something happening right now with COVID-19. So it's important to have these documents prepared so that you can use them at a moment's notice. especially if you're open to new opportunities. Having that prepared document if someone comes a knocking is always it's crucial, and time is certainly of the essence with those kinds of opportunities. And you don't want one to pass you by just because you haven't been keeping up on your resume or you had to rush it the night before someone asked for it. So make sure that it's something that's grows with you and grows with your career. It's an important tool. It's one that often gets forgotten, but certainly something that will come in handy when you need it. And when our resume writers are looking at resumes over here, and even the recruiters that we partner with, there are certain things that they're looking for as far as resume strength. And that's something that you can actually submit your own resume on our websites, employmentboost.com. We have free resume reviews and more information there. But things that we like to look at is the strength of that professional summary. We take a look at the content, again, looking at this accomplishments, are there metrics, things like that. We do, an eye test as far as SEO value goes. Are the proper keywords there? Is it set up in the proper way that those keywords will be effectively scanned? And that kind of value. We do take into account the aesthetics of the resume, the formatting. Is this visually efficient? Is this something that probably would get lost in the weeds? As far as the database goes. And we also look at word count. Do you want something that's too thick or too thin? No, you want it just right. Okay, so for those of you listening, any questions so far? Comments as far as what we've discussed resume tip-wise? You feel free to use the live chat feature on Google here, or YouTube rather. But yeah, if anyone has any questions at this point, I'll give a minute to see if anyone has anything. All right, so we're gonna keep moving then. We're over here at the job search tips section of the presentation. So once you've used all the tips that we just discussed as far as the resume goes, and you have your document all prepared, what do you do with it? How do you go about looking for that new job, that new opportunity? And the number one thing, and probably the most effective way to find that next role, is to utilize your network. You've got a lot of friends, a lot of colleagues, and they've got friends and colleagues that are in a lot of different roles, a lot of different industries, and maybe those are some places that you would like to be as well. It's good to stay connected with that network and to tap that when you can. Everybody knows that it's not what you know, it's who you know, and that goes really a long way. We found that there's probably about 2 to 3 jobs within any given person's professional network, but those aren't always readily visible. So it's something that you have to do a little bit of prodding with, be a little bit proactive. Go out and shoot an email with maybe some people that you'd want to grab coffee with to discuss some potential roles or anything like that. It doesn't have to be begging for a role, but certainly something that you can bring to light. And more often than not, there's something out there. So certainly a good place to start before having to utilize some of these other tools. And how do you get that network going and start to tap into it? There are a couple things that you can do. One of which, a good example would be connecting with alumni. There a lot of people. There's certainly something that you have in common with these people. So that's certainly a talking point there, and everyone likes to see success or help people, within their tribe, so to speak. So certainly something that you can use to connect with your network there. Another good thing is going to professional events, networking, job fairs, things even like that, nonprofits, volunteering, charities, all sorts of things, all sorts of organizations are hosting professional events. And if it's something that you're interested in, you can certainly go check it out. If you talk to even one person at every meeting, you're helping to expand your network. So always great opportunities there to connect. It might not always be the easiest thing, but it certainly is effective. It can certainly help out quite a bit when searching for that next role. Another way to build a network is to do it online, and the best way to do that is to maximize that LinkedIn profile. It's not the end-all be-all of the job search, but it is a humongous help. It's something that recruiters use all the time. It's something that hiring managers use all the time. It's a good place to cultivate your professional brand and to connect with people, that are hiring and that are in the space maybe that you want to explore. So you can seek out and connect with influential people, people that you admire, even something like that. You can do it by industry. You can do it by university or interest. You can be generic or specific. Everything like that. Everything is certainly there for the taking. And as far as making sure that your LinkedIn profile is optimized. That's something that Employment Boost does offer as well. We have more information on that on the website as part of some of the resume packages that we do, but we do offer updated LinkedIn profiles and even some coaching sessions on how to do exactly this, which is to maximize your presence there as part of the job search and the career planning as well. So certainly some information there if that's something that interests you. If you want to revamp that LinkedIn profile, it can go a long way in helping you expand that network. Something else that's covered as part of some of the coaching sessions is having to navigate job boards. Indeed, Glassdoor, Google, Monster, ZipRecruiter, things like that. All organizations that you've heard of. Are a great place to make sure that your resume is posted, and recruiters will use this to find qualified candidates. So again, this is helping to stand out against the competition and make sure that you have a optimized resume for that. But there's also tips for each document, or each website, I should say, in order to navigate that effectively, make sure that you're at the top. One of those things to keep in mind is that many of those boards, they want to show when a resume was updated. You don't want a stale document up there. So even if you're making just extremely minor changes to the resume, that can help keep it fresh, at least in the sense of the job board, to keep it towards the top of the pile as they continue to look at qualified candidates. Another thing you can do, and this is something that also goes through LinkedIn or even the job search sessions on our Employment Boost website, but it's connecting with headhunters. So, and this is certainly something that's helpful for people maybe going for higher level roles, senior level, even executive level. There's a lot of opportunities out there that maybe won't be listed on a job board or won't be listed even on the website. It's something that they will seek out discreetly. But if you are someone who is looking for one of those kind of higher level roles, make sure to get on the radar of headhunters, and expanding that network, expanding that presence on LinkedIn is certainly a way to do that. But you can also form a relationship with them, and they can certainly be helpful in kind of securing those roles that may not be available to everyone else. As far as navigating the job search, you want to be able to understand the technology, and we've done some discussion here about the applicant tracking systems, and that's a big part of that. The job boards are a big part of that as well. LinkedIn, another big part. Making sure that you keep in mind the application systems. It's automated today. It's technology heavy, so you have to have the proper tools to navigate that. You want to make sure that the documents that you have and your LinkedIn profile are optimized for search, SEO friendly, making sure that you have the proper keywords, making sure that those are front and center and used efficiently. Um, they can help you stand out. They really can bring you to the top of the pile as far as making sure that they are relevant. That's probably the number one decider of making sure that you can stand out in these different areas, and each one is going to be a little bit different. It's going to take a little bit of legwork to find those proper keywords and that proper balance for each area, but making sure that you have an understanding of the game in play here is certainly something that you need to know while embarking on that job search. And to bring it back to the resume, and it's something I mentioned earlier, but having the you know drawn out resume, that's something that would not be optimized for search. That's a good example of something that would not, while there are a lot of words there, it's not in an optimal way. So you don't want it to be longer than 2 pages. You want it to be loaded with keywords towards the top, and then things, the most relevant stuff towards the front, less relevant things towards the bottom. And it's not a laundry list of accomplishments. It's the greatest hits, and you don't want it to be, uh, everything. It's a tool to get you in the door. It's a tool to get you in front of a hiring manager or get you into a phone screen. It's an opportunity for you to gain some interest and then expand upon that interest later on. So with the resume, less is more, but you just want to be as efficient as possible with the words that you're using. And back to the tech-heavy nature of the job search today. Unfortunately, the human element it'll always be there, but at the lower levels, at the beginning levels of the search, it's starting to go away. So feedback on things like, what could I do better, or what was something that I can change on my resume. These are things you're not necessarily getting as much as you used to, and even feedback as far as a rejection. There's a lot of clients that I'll work with that they won't hear back from some of their applications that they've been sending beforehand, and that's just it's unfortunate. But there's a lot of applications going out there, so it's hard to gauge where you're at, as far as effectiveness with the resume. And this is something that we can help with as far as our free evaluation service on the website. We can kind of see how the resume is stacking up. We can provide some guidance for that, but that's just because we're able to interact with you and provide some feedback. And employers aren't doing that necessarily. Potential companies aren't doing that as part of the job search process. So it's tough, but don't be discouraged by it, because it's becoming the new norm. It's not just you. So something to keep in mind there. As a part of that, then you want to set some rules for yourself with the resume, and be as specific as you can to each particular position. Something that we see as part of that evaluation process on our website is that a lot of resumes will be very broad, and casting a wider net is not necessarily always the answer, but providing more specifics to a particular job posting can certainly help. That comes back to using keywords that they have in the job description, or doing a little bit of research on the company and putting that information into the cover letter to show that you've done some background work there. So everything with targeting a role is certainly helpful. So always keep that in mind, setting those rules for yourself. Making these kinds of tweaks with each application can be helpful, and it's certainly not necessarily the easiest thing, but you want to be more effective. And we'll come back to networking. You want to be specific and utilize that network as well. We've seen that maturity, being able to talk with these people and establish relationships, and that is something that a lot of people, within your network, they're probably subconsciously even just looking for people that might be a good fit. So being able to showcase that in not just formal settings, but informal settings, can go a long way. It's showing that you're also kind of culture fit, which is something we'll hit upon a little bit later here as we continue. And this is something difficult or easier said than done, I maybe should say, but you shouldn't procrastinate with the job search. So we've seen from research done at StarWire that 50% of new hires applied to the role within the first week that that job was posted, and then 75% applied within the first 3 weeks. So the longer that a job posting is online, the less likely you are to get through. A lot of applications are already being sent in. And not everyone gets a call back. For 250 resumes, maybe 5 or 6 will progress on past phone screens and into interviews. And then of those, obviously 5 or 6 or whatever it ends up being, one will get the job offer. So you want to be at least one of those 4 or 5 or 6 that get that interview. So if you find out about a job or a posting, or you hear something or you see something, make sure to hop on it as quick as you can, and that's why having that resume ready to go is important, and ready to be adjusted is important for that role. And having something specific prepared, it's really valuable as far as the job search goes, and setting you apart and getting a leg up on everyone else. Another thing you can see here, I'm sure there's more than a few organizations that you recognize, or logos that you recognize from that list, and that's because you should be looking at companies that will be a good fit for you. You don't have to necessarily always shoot for the stars, and it doesn't have to be all these great companies. There are a lot of great small companies out there as well that will be a good fit for you. But as you got to know what that organization is that you're going for and what they are looking for. A lot of people seem to think that everything is gearing younger nowadays. Not always the case. That's something that we've seen with, financial services is an example that we touch on here. But experience, does still mean something for a lot of organizations. So they will want to hire people with some experience, not always people that they have to train in every fashion and every facet of the business. They'd rather hire someone that knows a little bit about what's going on already, so that they can hit the ground running a little more effectively. So don't overlook organizations, but make sure that you have those organizations, what they value, in mind when you're applying. That's something that if it's not a good fit, it would just be a waste of your time. So you want to make sure that to do some due diligence there and be cognizant of what those organizations are targeting and what you bring to the table and how those mesh. Something that we touched upon as far as making sure the chronology of the document is good. Glaring gaps, that's something that a lot of people run into. It's a fairly common issue that we see, from resumes being submitted on our website for that free review, is that sometimes they'll have a gap and they don't know what to do with it. And sometimes that's a legitimate question that hiring managers will have. So it's okay to fill in the gaps as best you can, be it by education. Maybe you went back to school and you were able to expand your value that way. That's certainly fine. It might look weird, from one role to the next, but as long as you can explain that in a document, that's good. Another one is taking time off to care for a loved one, being a caregiver. Certainly something that is understandable, and a lot of organizations would actually value that and see a lot of value there. That it's tough to, obviously impossible to tie a number to, but it can provide some of those intangibles. So if there's certainly something that is a gap, more often than not, maybe not in every situation, but most situations, being honest and forward with what the gap was, will answer any of their questions, and then you can focus on some other things that you bring to the table as far as your value to the organization. So gaps can be tricky, and every one is different, but it's not something necessarily to gloss over. You want to make sure that those gaps are filled and that there's something to explain it. And as part of staying proactive, you want to stay informed. You want to make sure that you're following the trends. You don't want to be applying necessarily to a dying industry or a company that's had some bad PR in the news lately. You want to make sure that you are on top of things. As far as the industry goes, that you want to be a part of, making sure that you're a part of groups, that you're a part of the discussion, as part of networking, even within your city or region or national level. You can even start something. Make sure that you are just at the cutting edge of the industry and what things are brewing as far as the professional world goes. And if you can stay informed and on the newest trends, it's something that you can talk about in an interview. It's something that can showcase that you're on the ball, and that's something that maybe not everyone else is. So staying as relevant and as informed as possible can only serve to help you. With the document and with the job search and everything that you put out there, LinkedIn, speaking in interviews, things like that, make sure to focus on the relevant information. And this is something that kind of pairs into professional development, which we're going to get to in a moment here. But, being a certified yoga instructor is fantastic. Doesn't always translate well to being a plant manager, and doesn't really pair up well maybe with your Six Sigma green belt. So you can talk about that certainly, but it's not something you always have to showcase as much as some of the other things. So make sure to focus on the relevancy of your development, of your accomplishments, of the coursework that you've taken, of the roles that you've been a part of. And now more than ever, it's important. This is a great time where you can start to upgrade those skills and you can start to expand upon those certifications and professional development. So what are some things maybe that you can do for that? Learning new skills, expanding your network, working on weaknesses, some things maybe that you've identified or you've had told to you from performance reviews. This is all a time where you can really develop those and fill in some value gaps maybe that you have within your document. If you're not as proficient in something, now's the time. If you want to become a good coder, now's the time. There's certainly things that can be done online or even through other resources to help set you apart. These are the kind of things, the extra stuff, the above and beyond that you can become involved with. And professional development even includes that networking and being a part of groups. I know it's something that our career coaches, really push with our clients that end up going with the career coaching sessions that, you got to get involved, be it on LinkedIn or anything like that. So certainly good things to keep in mind there. Here we go. Additional ways to expand the skill set. You could be going back to school, participating. You could do research if that's something that's relevant within your industry. You can take on additional duties within your role. Sometimes that's a little bit difficult. But skills-based training, certainly something that helps a lot of people. Learning something new and bringing something new to the table. Focusing on process improvements even within your role, something that will improve your performance or going above and beyond as far as assignments goes. These are all things that will help build out your document and build out your skill set and build up even your confidence as far as going forward. So professional development, there's a lot of things out there. And it doesn't necessarily have to be as formal as going back to school or getting a certification. You can listen to a lot of, you can listen to podcasts. It's something that's, kind of going around lately is podcasts, and some people might chuckle, but Harvard Business Review has hundreds for free, and that's a lot of good information there. You can take things online through Coursera and get a certification there for a small fee without necessarily going through a university system. You can take the time to read a book. You can go into these other kind of institutions. Certainly something if you want to spend the money. You can go through online courses, but there's a lot of different areas. There's so many different avenues that you can go with professional development. And as long as you're doing that, you're doing more than the people who aren't. You're setting yourself apart in that way, and going above and beyond and putting your own personal investment into it, be it time or money, is something that hiring managers and potential employers can appreciate. They can appreciate someone who wants to take initiative and better themselves, and in turn better an organization. So professional development can go a long way. It's tough, it's extra, but it's something that can set you apart. Last but not least, we're going to close things out a little bit with some interviewing best practices. So the best practice with interviewing is practice. It might be something that you haven't done in quite a while. It's something that does require, it's not exactly like riding a bike. It's something that you should get back in the swing of things before it means something, and you don't want to ruin an opportunity just because you weren't prepared. So you can certainly practice beforehand with friends or family members, anything like that, and focus on your pitch. You want to focus on value. You want to also have some questions that you can ask. And this list can be generic, but you probably want it to be a good mix of some overarching things and maybe some things specific to the organization. Again, doing a little bit of research beforehand can help with that and show your investment in wanting to work for that group. You'll want to maybe shy away from being too personal. That's something that you can practice beforehand, is not diving too much into things that may not be relevant, or reveal some things that organizations may not want to hear. This is it could be any number of things, but the more professional that you can stay within the session, the better off you're going to be. And hiring managers, they are also gauging you for a culture fit, a comfort fit. So as long as you're confident, speak clearly, and are comfortable, that way you can kind of show off the best that you can be. Here are some things, just some questions, some common ones that we get with a lot of our clients that they run into in interviews, and some things that you can think about that are kind of tougher to answer. They're not like the most complex questions in the world, but they are tough things to answer as they're kind of open-ended. So things like, tell me about yourself, why you're leaving your current role, strengths and weaknesses, long-term goals. Things like that, all things that you should have a prepared answer for, and it's something that is crucial to practice beforehand. So make yourself comfortable with these. More than likely, each one of those is going to come up in a job interview of some sort, in some fashion. So always good to be prepared with that. Last thing to leave with, or one of the last things rather, is to prepare with what's called the elevator pitch exercise. So if you say you only had a minute, you were riding in the elevator with the CEO, and you wanted to make your presence known and make sure to give your best pitch, this is what you would do. So you want to give kind of an overview, a couple sentences about you overall, a couple sentences about you and your strengths, what you bring to the table, and then your current situation and how you found yourself to be there. So you can make sure to hit upon those key points. Again, relevant. You can hit upon some leadership aspects that always stick out, some things that you've been able to bring to the table, problem solving and things like that. It's something that you are going to have to speak and recite, so it's good to practice in front of the mirror. And we kind of broke down some of the best pitches that we've heard and seen some optimal presentations as far as that goes. So word count, it doesn't have to be exactly 231, but if you can hit a little over 200 words, about a minute, and really you don't want to repeat too many words. This is why it's important to write it out beforehand and recite some things. So don't want to just be repeating the same things, about 4 repeated words at the most. And it goes back, this is the last bit, but something that's always going to come up in those interviews, strengths and weaknesses. So it's good to do kind of that SWOT analysis, right? strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Make sure to have those known about yourself and be honest with yourself, or maybe even talk with someone else about those things so that you have a better understanding and you can effectively communicate those with a potential employer. Make sure that you're not revealing too much, maybe on the weaknesses side, but you can highlight some of the strengths, some of the things that you bring to the table that's relevant for the job, transferable skills, and things that really make you unique and make you you and make you a valuable asset to that organization. Okay, so that does it for the presentation here. If you have more questions for us, you can certainly get in touch on the phone, or you can get in touch on our website. We do those free resume reviews. We offer a full suite of services as far as resume writing, career coaching, job search advice, all sorts of things to get you set up with the job search. So any questions at all, anything like that, you can certainly feel free to reach out. I am going to open it up to some questions as far as the live chat goes. So if anybody would like to ask some things in there, I'm sure there's some questions. Okay, so we do have a question here about from recent college graduates. Wants to make some cold calls to new connections and help to establish that network. As far as cold calls go, this could be probably I would recommend through LinkedIn, even through in messaging. But you can say hey. I've seen some things that you've done on LinkedIn. There's a lot of things that I see with your career that I kind of aspire to. If you'd like to connect and discuss how you got there and how you did it, I'd certainly be open to that. That's a good way to do it. You can even do this almost in person, asking questions. Hey, what do you do? Who do you work for? How did you get into that kind of role? That's how that kind of gets rolling. The more that you can ask questions and get them talking, the better it'll be. The more information that you'll learn, and the better that relationship will be. So you can start slow from there, and maybe even ask like, hey, if you know anyone else that can be helpful in helping me get to where I want to be, point me in the right direction there. So even that, if they can't help you directly, maybe they can point you to someone who can. Any other questions? If not, we're gonna close up shop here. But I'll keep it open for a couple more minutes, or about 2 minutes or so, if there's any more questions. Sure. So something that we touched on, but as far as including a lot of details in the document, including everything about what you've done and what you've accomplished. And I know a lot of that it feels really important and really like a crucial part of what you've done. But it comes back to partially that visual efficiency. Making sure, hey, you got to fit it all within two pages. And if you list every little thing that you've done, it's certainly not going to fit. And hiring managers are not going to want to get bogged down and lost in the weeds with some of the minutia of day-to-day dealings. So if there's some things maybe that you can combine, or a great example of something maybe that you did every day, but one example that was a lot better than others, that can certainly go a long way in cutting some of that information down. Again, it's a way to get in the door. It's talking points. It's highlights. It's not necessarily everything that you've ever done. So that's the most effective way. It's the way that we recommend at Employment Boost you go about it. Because that'll keep it short, sweet, and to the point. And we do have another question here about how frequently you should change the resume. Now, with every application, really, the document should be changed. This goes back to tailoring the resume to each job description. over time, like I said, maybe 6 months to a year, maybe revisit it and make sure that things are still on track with where you want to go in your career. Maybe you've gotten a promotion since then. You can add that in. Maybe you've picked up some new proficiency because you're doing something new at work. You can add that in there. So long term, you can kind of look at it, like I said, 6 months to a year. But if you're deep in the job search, every application really there should be some changes. We do have a question here about negotiating salary expectations and things like that. That's a tricky one. Certainly something that our job job coaches can go into. That's one that they get quite a bit. Um, it's something that you would probably want to play a little closer to the vest towards the beginning. Asking about salary right off the bat in the phone screen in that first interaction can sometimes be a turnoff to certain organizations. But when the time comes, usually later in the discussion, it is going to have to be talked about. So just make sure to keep that in mind, but also, know your value. Do some research and know, what you should be compensated with, and keep benefits in mind as well. It's a tough one, and it's different for each situation, but playing it close to the vest, at least early on, is the recommended way to go. Okay, well, I think that's all the questions that we have, and we're running just short on time here. So I'm going to finish up. Make sure to check out the Employment Boost website at employmentboost.com. Submit a free resume review. We're here to help. We're here to provide some insights. We have a full suite of services. So if there's anything you need to prepare for that job search in kind of these uncertain times, certainly reach out, and we're more than happy to help in any way that we can. So once again, this is James Hunter Warning, and thank you for watching.